Today's episode of the Director Series is brought to you by Taylor Sound.
With his pair of breakout independent features, director Christopher Nolan had forcefully created an entry point for himself into the realm of professional mainstream filmmaking. The success of 2000's Memento in particular garnered a significant amount of attention from Hollywood establishment luminaries and maverick auteurs alike. He had asserted himself as a fresh new voice on the scene with the potential for mass commercial appeal just waiting to be tapped. It was only a short few years prior that Nolan had been unable to get the attention of independent film grand juries, and now he had the major film studios knocking down his door. Of these, Warner Brothers would ultimately be the ones to bring him into their fold, beginning what would eventually become the kind of exclusive, symbiotic relationship between director and studio, previously reserved for the likes of Clint Eastwood or Stanley Kubrick. The short-lived period of Nolan's early studio efforts began innocently enough, with him waltzing onto the lot as a young Turk with a lot to prove. But it would culminate with him being entrusted with Warner Brothers' crown jewel, and in the process, fundamentally realigning the course of mainstream American cinema itself. As previously mentioned, Memento caught the eye of many established Hollywood players, most notably actor-director George Clooney and indie iconoclast Steven Soderbergh. Their frequent collaborations together, especially as producers, cultivated a shared taste and talent, and they both saw in Nolan the perfect candidate to helm a project they had in development over at Alcon Entertainment, a remake of a Norwegian film from 1997 named Insomnia, about a detective investigating a grisly murder in an isolated town located so far north that the sun doesn't set for months at a time. Alcon's development deal with Warner Brothers effectively meant that Insomnia would become Nolan's first studio film, a testing ground to see if he really had what it took to play in the big leagues. As such, he would have to make a few concessions on the production methods he was predisposed to, namely, working from a script that was not his own. While he would ultimately perform his own pass on credited screenwriter Hilary Seitz's draft just prior to shooting, Insomnia was, more or less, a work for hire. Nevertheless, Nolan finds plenty of artistic common ground with Seitz's prose, enough that his first big-budget effort would feel a piece with the puzzle-esque nature of his earlier work and empower him to deliver a uniquely captivating thriller on par with its Swedish counterpart.
Killing that girl made you feel special, but you're not. You're the same distorted, pathetic freak I've been dealing with for 30 years. You know how many of you I caught with your pants down?
I never touched her like that.
You wanted to. Now you wish you had.
The wet evergreen mountains of British Columbia stand in for the majestic landscape of Alaska, where a pair of LAPD detectives have been sent into the small town of Nightmute to investigate the murder of a young local girl. Nolan's successful collaboration with the likes of Guy Pearce, Carrie-Anne Moss, and Joe Pantoliano in Memento begets here a cast with a higher industry profile and a sterling pedigree. Indeed, Insomnia begins Nolan's enviable habit of attracting award-winning talent, boasting no less than 3 Oscar winners among its ensemble.
Told you, Body gave us nothing.
Oh, she gave us plenty.
All this trouble, all this care. Why?
He knew her.
He knows we can connect him to her.
This isn't some random psycho, crime of passion.
Well, I don't know, maybe. But whatever happened, his reaction to it wasn't passionate. He didn't panic, didn't chop her up or burn her beyond recognition. He just thought about what we would be looking for.
Al Pacino headlines the film as Detective Will Dormer, a driven yet compromised cop besieged by an internal affairs investigation back home.
Well, you think Warfield gives a flying fuck about you shaking down a couple of drug dealers? You think that's gonna get him his headlines? He needs the big fish. He's putting a squeeze on you to get to me. It's very simple, that.
But you're clean, Will.
I'm a good cop, yeah. Well, there's always something that they can use, to get at your credibility, you know that.
Pacino plays the part like a subdued, run-ragged version of his character from Michael Mann's Heat, an aspect that no doubt wasn't lost on Nolan, being a self-styled disciple of Mann's. A big city cop in a small frontier town, Dormer is figuratively and literally adrift in a mental fog, isolated from any semblance of a familiar surrounding and lost in a perpetual state of exhaustion thanks to a winter sun that never sets and refuses to let him sleep. To further complicate matters, his inability to think coherently leads to the tragic accidental killing of his own partner during a raid on the suspected killer's hideout. The local Night-Mute police investigate the circumstances of the accident, led by the doggedly determined and fiercely insightful Ellie Burr.
So I'm gonna just take you guys over to the lodge and
No,
drop
just
your
take us to
bag.
the station.
Right. We need to get started. Most homicides are solved by work done in the first 72 hours.
Well, it's 48 hours. We're a day behind. But who's counting?
Hilary Swank imbues the character with a palpable sense of independence, cultivated by a life lived on the outermost boundaries of civilization. Meanwhile, Dormer pursues his suspect, a local crime novelist named Walter Finch.
I knew that everyone would think that I meant to do it, so I cleaned the body up, removed all trace of evidence that connected to me.
Except for your fucking novel.
Under pressure, you don't always see the wood for the trees. You, for one, should have figured that one out by now.
Played to chilling effect by the late Robin Williams in one of his rare serious turns, Finch uses his occupational insights into the law enforcement profession to become a formidable and unpredictable adversary.
They never look in the eyes of a killer. Killing changes you. You know that. It's not guilt. I never meant to do it. It's like awareness. Life is so important. How could it be so fucking fragile?
He's a killer, yes, but he's not barbaric. Williams projects the same warm sense of paternal authority he had in Gus Van Sant's Good Will Hunting, albeit turned on its ear to emphasize its innately creepy undertones. Finch differs from other murder thriller heavies in that his guilt is never in question. He admits his deed to Dormer openly and without shame, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Williams' performance is the standout of the film, and in light of his recent passing, stands as a somber reminder of the great talent we lost far too soon. Insomnia is arguably Nolan's most overlooked major work, but the impeccable quality of its craft lets it stand toe-to-toe with his best efforts. It certainly helps that the lush, pristine Alaskan wilderness provides a stunning and majestic backdrop entirely unique to the larger canon of crime thrillers. The production values afforded by studio backing amplifies the scope of Nolan's stylistic choices, which begin to coagulate here into an identifiable aesthetic. He brings back Memento cinematographer Wally Pfister in the second of what would be many more subsequent collaborations, filling the 2:35:1 35mm film frame with sweeping panoramas and earthy texture. Working in conjunction with production designer Nathan Crowley, who would also become a key collaborator in Nolan's filmography, Nolan cultivates a distinct color palette comprised of stark whites, blacks, and earth tones, with the surrounding evergreens in particular evoking that iconic blue-green color characteristic of the lush Pacific Northwest. Warm colors are typically avoided, concentrated mostly within the interior hotel sequences to convey a cozy, hearth-like atmosphere. The overall effect is one of majestic beauty pervaded by gloom and unease, especially so when a heavy fog envelops Dormer during the pivotal raid sequence. Nolan's camera work here is much more ambitious, perhaps even a little incongruous, considering the staggering sense of scope he imposes on what's otherwise a relatively grounded story. His films frequently employ lofty aerials, and Insomnia marks the point in which Nolan's camera finally takes flight, soaring through the dramatic vistas via a combination of helicopter mounts and cranes. On the ground, Nolan alternates between handheld camera work and classical dolly moves, making full use of his new toys to convey an epic scope as well as the unique cultural character of his setting. Editor Dodie Dorn and composer David Julian round out Nolan's returning collaborators, with Dorn's expressionistic approach reprising Memento's quick cutting technique as a means to jar the protagonist's thoughts with flashes of violence, while Julian's last collaboration with Nolan moves away from the electronic nature of their earlier work to embrace a big-budget orchestral sound reminiscent of a brooding Hitchcock film. Insomnia may not have initially sprung from Nolan's mind, but his artistic character permeates every aspect of the film. As previously noted, Michael Mann is a key influence on Nolan's aesthetic, and Insomnia allows the burgeoning director to play in his idol's wheelhouse.
The second you're about to dismiss something, think about it. Look at it again.
Aside from the shared casting of Pacino and a similar character archetype used by Mann, Nolan also evokes his spirit in the detailed and tactical accuracy imposed on even the most minute aspects of police work. For all his virtues as a man of justice, Dormer is also profoundly corrupt, He plants evidence to justify his own version of events, and even goes so far as to cover up his role in the accidental killing of his partner.
This kind of thing, I don't know. Maybe we do this by the numbers. Come on, bro.
AIA's gonna be on my ass. I don't want this turning up in some courtroom 6 months from now when my rep's in the shed. They're pulling apart all my cases.
Come on, Will, that's bullshit.
Fuck you care!
Nolan's interest lies in Dormer's struggle to achieve his objectives without sabotaging himself, continuing the tradition he established in both Following and Memento, where the fundamentally comprised nature of his protagonists allows him to better access the psychological underpinnings of their actions.
A good cop can't sleep because a piece of the puzzle's missing, and a bad cop can't sleep because his conscience won't let him. You said that once.
I did?
The twisting nature of Insomnia's plot also evokes the revelatory, puzzle-like character of Nolan's storytelling, which allows him to turn time itself into a compelling narrative and structural device. Perhaps rightfully so for his first mainstream Hollywood film, Insomnia is the first of Nolan's features to unspool in linear, chronological order. Nevertheless, time still plays an important factor in the drama. By setting the story in a place where the sun doesn't set for months at a time, the circadian day-to-night rhythm is utterly disrupted. In other words, Dormer is literally removed from the dimension of time itself. This wreaks havoc on his ability to function, which, in a profession that's entirely dependent on clear-eyed critical thinking and razor-sharp reflexes, becomes a formidable antagonist in and of itself. Just like he did for the home video releases of Following and Memento, Nolan would also assemble an alternate apocryphal cut of Insomnia, rearranging his scenes in the order that they were shot and overlaying his commentary.
We built that cabin. We used a crane with a gyroscopic head to follow their feet over the rocks and so forth. It was an enormous logistical feat that came off really very smoothly.
Unlike those prior alternate cuts, however, the narrative and logical cohesion of the story completely falls apart in this particular version of Insomnia. Thankfully, clarity isn't Nolan's purpose here. Rather, this version marries its disjointed order with his astute commentary to provide a unique glimpse into the day-by-day challenges of mounting his first big studio effort. The commentary also yields intriguing insights into his personal growth as a filmmaker. If his increasing directorial confidence wasn't palpable enough in the film itself, he reveals that, during the shoot, he didn't use crucial preparation tools like storyboards, shot lists, or video monitors. Instead, he let the choices of his actors organically block the scene for him, which he'd then think up coverage for on the fly while he stood by the camera and watched the performances directly instead of from behind a screen. Indeed, these techniques require an astonishingly high degree of confidence to embrace, and aren't typical of a director on only his third feature. But yet, there he was, pulling it off quite effortlessly. That gamble of confidence paid off when Insomnia debuted in May of 2002 to critical and financial success as one of those rarest of remakes that manages to match, if not transcend, its original material. Roger Ebert perhaps summed up the sentiment best in his review, hailing it not as a pale retread, but a re-examination of the material, like a new production of a good play. Insomnia may have been easily and overwhelmingly eclipsed by anything Nolan's made since, but it's nonetheless a strong and notable addition to his canon, and an important one too, as it would serve as an audition for his next high-profile film, setting the stage for the crowning achievement of his career thus far.
Now, today's episode was sponsored by TaylorSound.com. If you need sound design for your short film, short project, commercial, music video, they do affordable sound design online. And to get 15% off your next order, just type in HUSTLE anywhere in the Post Your Brief section. They are a great resource for filmmakers trying to get quality sound design at an affordable price. As George Lucas says, sound is half of the picture.